What's good, yo? Welcome to Griffin and Bass. He's Griffin, I'm Bass. Gonna jump into Deshaun Watson's settlement, the Lions and Colts coming up this weekend, as well as Hard Knocks Episode 2 and upcoming Episode 3, and the Big Ten new TV deal. Before we get into all that, though, gotta remind you guys to like and subscribe everywhere you can find us. That would be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as full episodes on YouTube and DetroitSportsNation.com. All right, Ryan. Well, so before Peter C. Harvey could make his decision in the Browns, Watson, NFL, Houston whole case, they came to the settlement they could not agree to the first time around. And they were able to get to it before a decision was made on a full year. And the settlement agreed upon is 11 games suspension and a $5 million fine. So, Ryan, before it was 6 games, NFL wasn't happy about that. We heard all the noise. They wanted a full year out of it. There was no way that Deshaun was going to be happy with anything, obviously. He's saying again and again that he's innocent and doesn't feel like he should be suspended any games. Yep. But between the NFL and the NFL Players Association, they have agreed on 11 games and $5 million in fines. So how you feel about this settlement?
I feel like, of course, nobody's happy, but it's really right in the middle between 6 games and a full season. 6 plus 5 is 11, and then I guess 11 plus 6 technically would be 17, but you can't really suspend him for like 11 and a half games, and he can come back in the second half of the 12th game or something. So I feel like the NFL probably should have just went with what the original ruling was if they really didn't want to get in the business of disciplining players, because they didn't either want the pressure, they didn't want the PR hit, they didn't want whatever, but they weren't satisfied with it. I think they thought that the Browns tried to get over on them by structuring Deshaun's contract the way that they did. So not only did they throw the extra games on there, they threw the extra fine on there as well. But I think the NFL obviously gave him more games because they want people to assume that this is an issue that they care about. The exact way to not do that is to have Deshaun Watson be able to come back in the game that everybody's going to be keeping an eye on. Not only is it Deshaun Watson's return, but it's his return to Houston where all of this stuff took place. Obviously, it's against his own team, and those fans are probably madder at Deshaun Watson than anybody is because he didn't play for them at all last year while this whole thing was going on, and they had a really bad record because they're the Houston Texans, and all it seems like they have is bad records. I guess except for when Deshaun was there, they've won the division 2 or 3 times or something like that. So the NFL still wants their ratings. They still wanted Deshaun to return to Houston, and I think it's they're trying to have their cake and eat it too by saying, hey, look at us, this is an issue we care about, but at the same time we know ratings are going to go ballistic when week 13 happens and Deshaun Watson's able to come back against his old team.
It's funny because all the noise we heard before was that the NFL was trying to make sure this didn't happen and that we wouldn't get Deshaun returning to Houston, but that is exactly what we are getting. Just to give you guys the full information out there, the fine and contributions from both the NFL for the $5 million and the Browns of $1 million each. So the NFL and the Browns are each going to add $1 million from each of them to go along with the $5 million fine. Will create a fund to support nonprofit organizations in the United States that, quote, educate young people on healthy relationships, promote education, and prevention of sexual misconduct and assault, support survivors, and related causes. That is what the NFL said in an announcement regarding the settlement. This all has to be signed off on by Watson. So basically he signs the settlement and it'll all be good to go. His suspension begins August 30th when the 53-man roster is solidified. He can return to the facility October 10th. He can resume practicing November 14th, and he can play his first game, like Ryan said, week 13 against the Texans. That would be December 4th. He also has to undergo therapy and treatment. So he's got to abide by whatever the therapists and all of them say. And if he doesn't, then we're going to be back here and his suspension could be longer. So he's got to go abide by what they are telling him to do to get back on the field and play for the Browns. But until that happens, Ryan, this is now Brissett's team. And we've seen Jacoby Brissett a few times. He was with the Patriots. He was with the Colts. He's had 37 starts. His record as a starter, not great. 14-23. There's mentioning of the Browns maybe keeping an eye on other quarterbacks like a Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know why Jimmy G would want to come here when he knows it's going to be a one-year lease at best, while also fighting for the position with Jacoby Brissett. But if Brissett is the one who's taken this team through the first 12 weeks of the season, 11 games, because they do have a bye in those first 12 weeks, how do you see this panning out for the Cleveland Browns?
So, lucky for the Browns, I actually think they can tread some water here before Deshaun comes back. I mean, you look at their first couple games, and their schedule looks like a cakewalk. Their first game is against the Panthers. And look, when Jacoby Brissett is your quarterback, nothing is a guaranteed win. Like, theoretically, these games could all be losses, but game number one is on the road against the Panthers,
and against Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, which is not a very good. They're just not a good team, right? Game number two, the Jets come to town. The Jets are really bad. The Steelers come to town with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, and then they go on the road at the Falcons. Theoretically, the Browns could be 4-0, and then they play the Chargers. Unless the Chargers have some catastrophic injuries, I don't think anybody is picking the Browns to upset the Chargers there, especially with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And then they host the Patriots. Again, I don't think the Patriots are a good team. Then they have the Ravens and the Bengals. So right there, you're looking like potentially at like 6-3 before Deshaun Watson comes back. They play the Dolphins and the Bills. So if they can get to like 6-5 or even 5-6, before Deshaun comes back, I think they can do some real damage, right? Obviously, he comes back against the Texans. The Texans, again, not expected to be a very good team. One thing I'm interested, kind of even more so than like the beginning of the season for the Browns before Deshaun comes back, is what happens after Deshaun comes back, right? Because he comes back against the Texans, and then he has 6 games where he's playing football this year. 4 of those games are on the road. And to me, this Deshaun Watson comeback is going to be way more mental than it is physical. I already think he's a great quarterback. If he's rusty, he's still probably like a good quarterback, just not one of the top in the NFL like he might be when he's fully 100% right. But you are going to be the absolute target for all the hate, all the vitriol, all the name calling, like we saw it in Jacksonville in the preseason, where they were chanting, you sick F, right at Deshaun Watson in the end zone. And his first game back against the Texans, that's probably going to be the worst of it. So you're getting that out. You're getting that out of the way right away. And then you go to the Bengals, who are a division rival. And then you do have 2 games at home. I don't expect your home fans are going to be heckling you. And then you end the season on the road at Washington, and then again on the road at a division rival with Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh fans can get pretty nasty too. So it's really, for me, the most interesting thing kind of about all of this, and it might determine whether or not the Browns make the playoffs, is just where Deshaun's head is when he comes back. Is he going to let more hate than he's ever gotten before, like in his life? Is he going to let that affect him? And not that people weren't saying negative things about him when this story broke, but he wasn't playing on the field, right? He could typically not hear it if he just shut off his TV and didn't go on social media. Because other than that, people in his life probably aren't just calling him out and all types of things like that. But when you're on the football field, there's no escape to it. You're going to have the crowd. You're probably going to have other players trying to get in your head. So to me, and for the Browns and for Deshaun Watson, that's going to be what I'm most interested in seeing. And having 4 of those last 6 games on the road, which are the 6 that Deshaun can play, that's really going to determine the season for me.
Man, you are optimistic about this Browns group with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. Because if I'm the opposing team now,
it's a weak schedule.
It's not that weak of a schedule where you can just say load the box and do not let Nick Chubb beat us. And let's see if Jacoby Brissett can beat us. And I think that's exactly what all these teams are going to do. That's what Bill Belichick's going to do. He knows Brissett quite well. But at Carolina against Baker Mayfield. I'm hoping the entire time in Carolina the fans are
not any good.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But, I'm hoping that everyone in Carolina is sitting there chanting, thanks for Baker over and over again while that game's going on. Yes, the Jets. I don't know about Pittsburgh. We'll see what ends up happening with Pittsburgh. They got a hell of a running game as well and a pretty good coach. At Atlanta, yeah, not a good team. Chargers, a loss. New England, I think, is a loss. Baltimore, I think, is a loss. And Cincinnati is a loss. So I think at best, they're 4-4 before the bye. I think I'm going opposite you. I'm going to say 3-6 before the bye, or 3-5 before the bye. And then at Miami, we'll see what Miami is at that point. They're supposed to be better this year. We'll see what happens with Tua. At Buffalo, loss. Tampa Bay, loss. And then at Houston. And now you've got all these fun ones on the road with Deshaun Watson behind center. I don't think this is going to end up being a very good year for the Browns, and I'll say that now. I think in the end they're going to be under a 500 record when it's all said and done. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is a good quarterback. I know the Browns have a good offensive line and a hell of a running attack. I don't think it's enough when you have a quarterback that you don't fully believe in if you're the opposing defense and are going to say, let him try and beat us because we're not going to let Nick Chubb do it. So go ahead, Brissett. See what you can do against our defense and against our secondary, and see if our front seven can get to you in time. So I'm going to go out and say that they are finishing 8-9 at best this year. That's my at best record for the Cleveland Browns, with Jacoby Brissett being their quarterback for 11 of their 17 games.
All right, but 14 teams make the playoffs now. 8-9 might still do it. You'd get a wild card. I'm of course not picking them to win the division, but I think
you think 8-9 is going to get them a wild card in the AFC North, because they're going to be behind the Ravens and the Bengals.
I think 8-9 will get them close to a wild card. It'll be in the hunt. They'll be on the graphic as long as they're not 6-11 or something. But the Steelers might not. I mean, the Steelers have Mitch Trubisky at quarterback.
Yeah, not a good quarterback.
The Steelers might not be any good. The Patriots might not be any good. Mac Jones is kind of whatever. He's still young, obviously. It's not saying he's going to be a scrub forever.
What do you mean? He's number 85 in the top 100. They got him 14 spots ahead of Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, they do. This is preposterous.
Yeah,
and the Browns have a defense where, like you say, the teams can stack the box against the Browns will probably have success. I mean, the Browns' defense isn't any type of slouch, so when they go against a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who doesn't have any weapons outside of, DJ Moore at receiver, and then they have, obviously Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, but the Pittsburgh doesn't have, weapons outside. They have Deontay Johnson and then, George Pickens, who's a preseason hero, but we don't know if he's going to be any good. So I think the Browns' defense is capable of keeping them in some of these games, too. It's not just going to be Jacoby Brissett slinging the ball all over the place, leading the Browns to an 8-3 record before Deshaun comes back. But I think they can be 5-6, and if they are 5-6, 6-5 when Deshaun comes back, I think they'll very much be in the hunt to still make the playoffs by the time he returns.
All right. You have a whole lot of faith in a team that's been very, very bad for most of their existence. I wonder if can you have that same faith for our Lions? No?
I have before, and it's not this year.
All right, well, speaking of our Lions, we were blessed with a second episode of Hard Knocks this week, which recapped part of the Lions-Falcons game and also brought to fruition what I said when we talked about Hard Knocks before an episode even aired. And we were talking about who we thought would be some studs of the show. And I said it flat out, and you can go back and check the tape. Malcolm Rodriguez. Watch out for Malcolm Rodriguez. This kid could end up being a star of Hard Knocks. And now he might end up being a starter for the Detroit Lions defense, because episode 2 was a whole bunch of number 44, proving a whole lot of people wrong about what he can do with his smaller stature. Ain't the size of the dog in the fight, size of the fight in the dog, and that dog has a whole lot of fight, Ryan.
I mean, I think it's more of a negative on our linebacking room in general, that the 6th-round pick might come in and start day one, and that he comes in and that he's already better than all of these other guys. But we knew the linebacker and group for the Lions was weak. It was weak last year. They really didn't do anything to address it in the offseason. I know they brought in Jared Davis again, who was bad here the first time, and surprise, he's probably still bad. And then, of course, they drafted Malcolm Rodriguez. So it's great to see that he's stepping up and becoming one of the better linebackers on the team already, it seems like. But it's also scary because that means the rest of your linebackers probably aren't very good. Like, even if Malcolm Rodriguez turns out to be decent this year, if he's your best linebacker, you're in a whole lot of trouble on defense.
Well, hold on now. What are we talking about here? They were talking about, there's a coach that's been with the Lions for 5 years, hasn't seen a linebacker like Rodriguez in his 5 years in Detroit. Yeah, we've got terrible linebackers here, and we have for a long time.
I was going to say, well, if you've been in Detroit all 5 years, you probably wouldn't have seen a linebacker like him, because our last good one was DeAndre Levy, and he quit football.
Yeah. No kidding. All right, well, so episode 2, we saw a whole bunch of Rodriguez. We saw more Campbell and Glenn and Deuce going into it. And then we saw the game, as well as some focus on David Blau and his Olympian wife, track star, hurdler.
I could do without all that. Shout out Oak Park High School, though.
I mean,
They were training.
It was cool seeing the team behind, their backup quarterback sitting there rooting, watching with him and rooting her on, while she was in the Olympics. I thought that was cool. And then we get to the actual game. And, you see the womp womp coming as they're talking about the game. Obviously, we know what happened in the end. But, they're all this hype and talking about it. And Dan Campbell in the last 4 minutes, let's go finish the game. He is not trying to run the clock out. He's trying to go score a touchdown to win this game, with double-digit scoring. And then the fumble. And then the defense. And then there's just, not enough time left. About a minute and a half left for the Lions to try and get a Hail Mary in. Doesn't happen. Lions lose their only home game of the preseason. Blau feels terrible, obviously, afterwards. But I felt for Blau watching all that, knowing what was coming, because I did feel for him. But it was cool seeing, even though we already knew what happened, it was cool seeing the Hutch stuff happen, and the fans. And it was, is it St. Brown's family that was calling out Hutch's family for sitting up in the in the VIP boxes? And they ain't down here with us.
Yeah, I mean, John Brown stole the show, Amon-Ra's father. Between that and the training sequence, and I mean, I assume we're probably going to get a lot of the Hutchinson family, because I think a lot of people want to see that. I don't. I'm over it already. Even when they're at the game, it seemed like his dad was just hyper focused. Even after he got the tackle for loss or whatever, and the mom starts crying, and then she's looking at the dad, and he's just staring at the at the field, like, yep, saw it. So he was probably a little bit more focused than the rest of his family was, but. It was cool to see the game and how the coaches were reacting on the sideline. Deuce Staley getting upset at DeAndre Swift for scoring a touchdown, which, if you're the Lions, you don't score a whole lot of touchdowns. So I don't know why you'd be mad at it. But there was a lot of meat on the bone, I think, in this episode, and a lot of things people took away from it that they could, kind of pick apart.
I actually appreciate Deuce going at him. Is that, basically it's an idea of never settling, and there were holes made for you by the guys whose job it is to make holes for you in the middle, and you bounced out too quickly to get to the outside. And he's yelling at him, stay disciplined, follow your blockers, and find the holes, as opposed to always. I mean, look at Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush was always trying to bounce it outside as opposed to following his holes, and his career didn't last as long because of it, because he took big hits trying to get outside and lost yardage and a lot of hole running sideways as opposed to north and south. So I appreciate that from Deuce, and I understand. Don't pull up number of touchdowns that Deuce ran for in his career. I don't want to hear it.
Because it's not a lot.
It's not a lot. I understand.
Because DeAndre Swift is already beat that number, in case you were wondering.
All right.
Deuce Staley played for 40 years.
Hey, if you can do, you do. If you can't, you teach. So, Deuce is teaching now. So, it falls right in line.
And, Reggie Bush was also in the NFL for 10 years.
I know. I mean, I'm just saying, for as far as one of the big complaints with Reggie was Reggie was always trying to bounce it out as opposed to following his blockers and trying to find the holes made for him by them. And he's trying to get Swift to be that kind of runner where he can be that, amazing running back in the NFL that Deuce apparently believes he can be. And it's not always going to be bouncing it outside. Sometimes you have to take what was given as opposed to bouncing it out.
Guess who already has more touchdowns than Reggie Bush ever had in a single season as well? Just guess. If you guess DeAndre Swift, the number's correct. Okay. So this is a guy who knows how to find the end zone, and getting upset at him because he didn't take an 8-yard gain by following his blockers. And instead, he used his athleticism to get to the outside and score a touchdown, and now you're mad at it. Staley didn't draft him, but the Lions drafted him to be this great athlete that he was. Let him be that great athlete.
I'm just saying I understand where Deuce is coming from. All right.
Yeah. Don't score.
Yeah.
Be a man and don't score.
That's exactly what Deuce said. Yes. All right. So
what he said.
We're getting ready for preseason game number 2 against the Indianapolis Colts. There have been some joint practices going on Wednesday and Thursday. And the word coming in early from the joint practices is that the Colts were handling the Lions pretty decisively that first day, as far as they took care of the offense on 7-on-7, and the defense was giving up touchdowns in the red zone like it was their job to actually give up touchdowns as opposed to stopping them. But apparently when they got closer to the 11-on-11... Is
Deuce Staley the defensive coordinator?
Yes.
Okay.
When the offensive line came in for the Lions, apparently things started changing when they got to 11-on-11, and the Lions were actually starting to look like a real football team. There was a bit of a scuffle that I sent you the video on before we got on here, so I'm hoping you had a chance to watch it, because it looks like that scuffle was really much of nothing until Jeff Okudah comes running in out of nowhere and really sets things off.
Well, he's got to make a name for himself somehow, because apparently Michael Pittman has just been torching him during these drills, during these practices, whatever you want to call them. So, I mean, that should give Lions fans a little bit of a healthy dose of reality, I think, right? There was a bunch of optimism at the start of the season. There's somebody that we know, who does DSN content, DSN media with us, who thinks the Lions are like 9 wins. And to me, that's insane. But there's a lot of people that do think that. They think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year. And then you see them go up against, another team. Granted, it's only a joint practice, right? It's not like they're in the game. But, you're not going up against your own guys who are bad because you're the Lions and you're just a bad football team. You're going up against a team who, has a shot to win their division, and they're beating the crap out of you right now, from all reports. I think even Dan Campbell came out and said as much today. Like, today was a better day than yesterday was, but we're still not on the level of the Colts, essentially, is how I read it. And it makes sense to me because it's kind of what I expected. But it's I think it should give kind of a message to Lions fans to maybe pump the brakes a little bit.
They ain't gonna listen to that. You already know they ain't gonna listen to that. Some good news for Lions fans and the Lions in general. Wide receiver Quintez Cephas traveled with the team and participated in some individual work, but no team stuff. This past Monday was his first day back at practice, so that is good news for getting him back into the mix sooner rather than later. So we have this Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern at Lucas Oil Field. The Lions are 2.5-point favorites against the Colts in Indianapolis. So are the Lions playing their starters and the Colts are playing their third stringers? I'm trying to figure out how the hell the Lions are favored here.
Hey, I don't understand. My only thought would be, I don't know if Matt Ryan's going to play at all because he is obviously an older quarterback. So whoever the Colts have as a backup,
Nick Foles.
They're just giving the Lions like a first-team offense. Okay, well, Nick Foles sucks too. So
Super Bowl MVP.
Just giving the Lions.
Super Bowl MVP. Yes. Nick Foles is going to have problems with the Lions?
Yes. No, probably not. That's why I would bet on the Colts to win this game. I would imagine Jonathan Taylor probably doesn't play because I don't really think he needs to. I guess he might. The Colts might be sitting a bunch of guys. I would still pick them to beat the Lions, though, because I just don't. I don't understand how the Lions would be favored, especially after how these joint practices are going.
Well, I mean, I guess
unless all those guys are just sitting.
Yeah, I don't really understand it either. There's nothing I'm seeing that's favoring the Lions here as far as word from the joint practices. Outside of, I guess, the 11-on-11s looked pretty good for the Lions' favor when their actual offensive line was on the field. They were doing a pretty good job of holding off the Colts' defensive line. But I know Matt Ryan is nowhere near what he once was, but our secondary is so bad. I just feel like Matt Ryan or Nick Foles is going to have no problem against our secondary, even if Jonathan Taylor is not in the game. But forget that side of it. What do you want to see in the Week 2 preseason game from the Lions?
I mean, I want to see something from Jeff Okudah because while I don't think there's a lot you can take out of the preseason, like, I'm just interested to see how he looks on a football field, and if he's still getting torched, that's really not a good sign. So I'd like to see him play well and keep up with, even at least the second stringer on the Colts offense. And that's mainly what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the offense to really do anything so spectacular, or maybe you're looking for DeAndre Swift to run inside and not score touchdowns. I really don't know what. I just don't know what you'd be looking for. There's not really a quarterback battle. It seems like David Blau is still second string, based on some news that I saw today pop up on Twitter. I think it was Kyle Meinke or Colton Pouncey, who was talking about, Blau is taking a lot of kind of those second team reps. So him and Boyle is still a battle. Are the Lions going to carry 3 quarterbacks into the season, or is one of Boyle and Blau going to be the odd man out? And is that going to be determined in this game and then the next game? Is probably probably the most intriguing storyline for the Lions.
I want to see the defense. I want to see the defense. Show me that you learned something from Week 1 preseason and from the practices this week as far as just, enforcing yourself a little bit more than what we saw in Week 1, because they were just letting Falcons do whatever they wanted up and down the field. They weren't stopping much, especially when the game counted. That last, they did the first time. They forced a 3-and-out before the fumble. But then after the fumble, gave up that touchdown. Obviously, the fumble was in our own territory, so that makes it quite difficult on the defense. But you did have them at 4th and 9, so you did stop them to that point and, could have gotten off the field and then held on for a win. 4th and 9 turned into a, tiny Hail Mary touchdown pass where our defensive backs, once again, were outworked to get to the ball and the game-winning touchdown. So I want to see the defense, especially the secondary, start to enforce their will a little bit more and, prove they deserve to be on the field and belong on this field in an NFL game. That defense has a lot to prove and has left a lot to be desired. The offense, I don't know how much we're going to get from the first teamers again. It's preseason. Wins and losses don't really matter at all. But I do want to see something from the guys that are going to be having an impact on the season for the Detroit Lions, whether that's a first teamer, a second teamer, a third teamer, whatever you may be. And then obviously, I want to see the young guys. I want to see 44, Rodrigo running around. I want to see Paschal. I want to see Hutch. I want to see Houston. I want to see these guys and Kirby Joseph, doing exactly what he did last time, 7 tackles, 5 of them solo. Seeing Lucas, did pretty well as well. The young guys are doing it, and if they're going to continue to do it, then I want to see them actually playing in the games that count. Because if they're outworking the veterans that have been there, well, what's been there ain't been working. So might as well let the rookies do it.
Yeah, you always like to see the young guys play, and if Aiden can make some more plays, or if Paschal or Rodriguez can make some more plays, that'll be obviously exciting for the Lions, just to see them keep building and learning. And hopefully they get to play a little bit more than they did in Week 1 as well, but I guess that's still obviously to be determined.
All right, and then what about episode 3 of Hard Knocks? What do you think we're going to see? Obviously, we're going to see some of this, the joint practicing stuff, but they've been focusing on different players throughout. So there's been there really hasn't been much focus at all on Jared Goff. You think we're going to see a little more of Goff in episode 3, or you think they're going to still shy away from the starting quarterback?
No, I think they'll probably shy away from the starting quarterback because he's. I think he might just be a boring guy. Same reason we haven't seen Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. Like if you didn't know anything about the Lions, you would think Deuce Staley was the Lions offensive coordinator, with the way that they're so focused on him. And to me, they made it seem like he was the one calling the plays in the preseason game when they're calling him and he's looking at his notepad or whatever it was, looking down and like just a heavy focus on him. If I didn't know any better, I probably would have thought that Deuce Staley was the one calling plays for the Lions. So I think we'll get more focus on that. If anybody balls out in one of these games, we'll probably get some focus on that too. But I think they'll keep a focus on Rodriguez. I think they will keep a focus on Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, and I think a new focus might be on the battle for the backup quarterback. You had a lot of Blau last week and really none of Tim Boyle, but a lot of Blau, and then we saw him, fail at the end of the game, essentially, trying to rally the troops. So that would be, I don't know, my guess is they would focus on that and kind of play up the uncertainty of both of these guys making the team, because Dan Campbell said it last week, for a lot of these guys, this is their biggest moment that they're ever going to have in the NFL, is like being on this preseason team before they end up getting cut. So I think we'll start to see some more of that. Or even, I don't know if they want to focus on Jared Davis or something, but like a guy who was drafted with high expectations, obviously, and is coming back here, and last week got called out, him and all the other linebackers, because the 6th-round pick is, over here outperforming them. So there's a couple different ways that they can go, and that's kind of what I think they will do.
All right, before we jump off of this, when they brought Barry Sanders in, and they cut back to 1997 and showed the practice field that Barry Sanders was running on, I almost threw up. It's like, man, like we didn't even take care of our best athlete back in the day. Like we had him running on like halfway dirt and like expecting this, this team to be something.
Good thing Deuce Staley wasn't coaching Barry Sanders.
All right. Let's get on to the last bit of news here before we get out of here. And that would be the Big Ten reaching a 7-year media rights deal with CBS, Fox, and NBC for football and basketball. And this will run through the 2029-2030 season. It will begin July 1st of 2023. And according to, people in the know, this is believed to be the largest in the history of college athletics, with industry sources putting the approximate value of the deal at $1.2 billion annually. Ryan, we have grown up with the SEC on CBS, hearing that CBS music that I always thought was SEC music. And now we're going to be hearing it with the Big Ten coming out, starting next year. How you feeling about this deal the Big Ten has made for a multi-platform deal to see them in the morning on Fox, in the afternoon on CBS, and at nighttime on NBC?
I love it. I love that we can kind of have the different networks, because at least for NFL football, I've always liked NBC's coverage, obviously with Sunday Night Football, and I know they do the Notre Dame games too, but it seems like it'd be a real treat to have some Saturday Night Football action on NBC, and then you just get kind of all these different tastes, right? You're losing ESPN, so you're losing the game day crew, and all of those guys who we probably become most familiar with, them and the Fox guys, certainly in Big Ten country. But I think it's cool that we kind of get a little platter of everything, a little appetize sampler, if you will, to really compare and contrast like the different networks, the different presentations, and being able to have 3 different ones is cool to me, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I hope NBC comes back with some type of like basketball too. I hope they're not just football, because I would like to see what they do with some college basketball coverage, just to be like interested in it. I know they used to do basketball, but that's not anything that I really remember from my time being alive, or certainly being a basketball fan. So if they do some of that, I'll be pretty excited, and it's something that I'm just looking forward to. I think is obviously great for the Big Ten. It's something that can attract recruits to all these schools, hopefully mostly Michigan State, but it's good for the conference overall, and it's exciting for me as a viewer, again, just to be able to break up some of the consistent like broadcasting duos or broadcasting channels that we see.
Is it Fox that stole the NBA on NBC theme song and they're using it for college basketball? I think it's Fox that did that with college basketball.
Yeah.
So yeah, if NBC gets back into it, they steal that music back, because that music is my childhood. As far as all I think about whenever I hear that music is the NBA Finals and Michael Jordan beating some team, whether it was the Jazz or the Sonics or the Suns or whoever. But yeah, this is a big deal for us in the Big Ten. Look, CBS has been the highest rated college football network since 2009. The majority of those years have been covering the SEC, who has been, as far as national champions is concerned, the best conference in college football for quite a long time now. So getting to watch CBS, who I think does a hell of a job with production for college football. I was tired of watching Ole Miss versus LSU versus Mississippi State versus Alabama versus Georgia versus Florida. Like, I just would love to see them, with Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, whatever. And then eventually we're going to see it with USC and UCLA when they join the Big Ten in 2024. And then we're just going to have Big Ten literally coast to coast from Rutgers and Maryland all the way across to the Trojans and the Bruins, which I'm sure played a big part in this big deal.
Yeah, and apparently the Big Ten might not even be done yet, and might be looking for some more expansion. You would assume out west, whether it's Washington or Oregon or Stanford, or something like that, along with, of course, Notre Dame, and the NBC tie-in. Makes even probably more sense for Notre Dame. Now we'll have to see, of course, what comes of that whenever it happens, or even if it doesn't happen. But it sounds like the Big Ten is actively, trying to make that a new reality, and it's just something that, the college football landscape, the college sports landscape, I guess, is going to be totally just changed, right? Because now you're going to have, in these conferences, now you have like Ohio State, USC, Michigan in the same conference, and it's gonna be a lot tougher to win now that you have all these different teams, and there might be a year that lines up where you're playing Ohio State, Michigan State, like in USC, and there's probably 4 losses that you're looking at. And then if you're one of these other teams, you might become a little bit more battle tested by the time the playoffs come. And then maybe you're not getting embarrassed by some of these SEC teams if, your only big games are against Ohio State and Michigan, or Ohio State, Michigan State, or something like that. So, I think it's better all around for the conference. It'll, of course, make for a more entertaining product. With basketball, of course, you have UCLA coming in. USC to an extent, but UCLA, a blue blood in basketball for sure. And then in football, you have USC, you have UCLA, and it's just it'll be a fun time in the Big Ten Conference for both of these sports, with a lot of marquee matchups that these new networks that are now partnered with the Big Ten are going to take full advantage of, I'm sure.
I think another cool thing about this is that with the streaming coming in as well, CBS has Paramount Plus. NBC has Peacock. The games are going to be able to be streamed on there as well. So if your team that you want to watch, the game you want to watch, is for whatever reason not being broadcasted in your area, you jump onto the app and you can live stream it through there, which makes it easier for you being able to watch whatever team you want. It looks like we're becoming more and more of a two-conference United States here when it comes to sports, and apparently that is kind of been a sentiment from a few people that are familiar with these TV negotiations, is that it's basically a Power 2 and then everybody else, and that it's not really a Power 5 anymore. It's the Big Ten and it's the SEC in football. And if you want to look at reality, it's really a big one and then a smaller one, because the SEC, the number of national championships they've had since 2007 is just utterly ridiculous. And the Big Ten needs to find a way to get back into that race somehow.
Well, I mean, this is doing it right. I mean, you have Lincoln Riley's there now. I guess he could jump to the NFL or whatever. But you're bringing in Lincoln Riley at USC, which it just seems like unilaterally people think is eventually going to become a powerhouse one way or another, with the way he can recruit and the way that you can just sell USC and LA in general, and then, you know, the way he can coach as well. And then, of course, Ohio State, Michigan State looks to like they're on the uprising with Mel Tucker, and then Michigan is always at least a pretty good team, and they of course are the defending conference champions. So like you have a lot of promise there in football, and then same thing in basketball. You know, a lot of those programs are still really good. UCLA in the Final Four a couple years ago, Michigan, in like 5 straight Sweet 16s, Michigan State in the Final Four, 3 years ago, something like that. Like it's just, it's a really strong conference from top to bottom, and at least the big 2 sports, and even a lot of the ancillary ones. Although I would assume a sport like tennis isn't having their USC team fly from USC to Minnesota or something. So I think those sports will be a little bit less affected by this change, and this is more a big 2 type of deal.
And regardless of what sport they're playing in, these schools are about to get paid, because when USC and UCLA join the Big Ten in 2024, each of the currently now 16 Big Ten schools will receive an average of $75 million annually from the media rights, and that doesn't even include the college football playoffs or the NCAA tournament. This is just flat-out regular scheduled games that they're going to be getting paid on.
It's crazy for even a team like Rutgers, who I think they generate, I was listening to Detroit radio today, and they were talking about how Rutgers generates like $18 million a year from their football team or something. And like Michigan's up at 100, Michigan State is at like 65 or something. So this extra $75 million for Rutgers, it's 4 times the amount of money that they generate from football regularly. So it's a huge boost, obviously, to all the schools. But if you're a school like Rutgers, you're probably enjoying, this media deal, maybe even a little bit more so than some of the big boys are.
This is a crazy deal. I mean, you're getting all these different networks. You're getting away from ESPN, and how they're trying to figure this all out is just crazy to me. So apparently, the Big Ten and Fox are going to coordinate a draft, with games being chosen by the networks across each of the 7 years of the deal. And Fox has the first pick each year, according to a source, that was talking to CBS Sports. And that means that, look, this is the Big Ten. As of right now, there's one game that stands above the rest, obviously, and that's Michigan and Ohio State, the game. Once USC and UCLA get in the mix, and if Notre Dame gets in the mix, there might be some changes there, but I don't see it really changing and taking away from what the game has meant, even though Ohio State has dominated the majority of those games over the last 20 years. But what it does mean is that Fox is going to get the first pick, and then every other year they trade off between CBS and NBC on who gets the second pick and who gets the third pick. And the only way we're going to see any Big Ten team on ESPN is when they're facing a team from the ACC, the Pac-12, or the SEC, or whatever, not facing another Big Ten school. It's the only way we're going to see them again on the 4-letter network.
Or one of these bowl games, right, that ABC or something carries.
Sure. But regular season games, we're not getting them anymore.
Do you think they can tank? Like, if you have the worst ratings one year, you get the first pick the next year?
No, because Fox is getting that pick. They already got it. It's already done. Like, apparently, Fox is getting the first pick, and NBC and CBS are going to go every
trade
other
some
year.
future picks.
That's right.
I'll trade you Michigan, Ohio State this year for.
You give me the next 3
USC,
games.
UCLA in 3 years.
Give me USC Notre Dame. Give me Michigan State USC or Michigan State Notre Dame.
I mean, Notre Dame might just not end up playing any of these teams. Big Ten might shut Notre Dame out completely. I don't think it will happen, but I mean, I have to believe they're at least talking about it. Again, not something that I think is going to happen, but the idea has to be floated in that room now. It's like, hey, we have every one of their rivals, and we have NBC. Like,
that's what I mean. Like, it's
time to strong arm them a little bit.
It's crazy, though. Like, you have to get Notre Dame into the Big Ten. I mean, between the old-time rivalries for years with Michigan and Michigan State, the historical games between Michigan and Michigan State and Notre Dame, you're talking about the 1965-66 tie, 10-10. You're talking about the 5 years, whatever. I think it was 10 years where we played Notre Dame every year and a road team won every single year. Like, no team could win on their home field against each other. It's, obviously USC and Notre Dame have a big rivalry. Notre Dame and Stanford have one that's kind of been an up-and-coming one. And then you got the in-state ones of Notre Dame and Purdue, Notre Dame and Indiana. So, it makes so much sense to me for Notre Dame should have been in the Big Ten 50 years ago. I understand they've been their own entity and all that crap, but TV deals are changing, and I think it's going to force Notre Dame into the fold sooner rather than later. At least I hope so.
Me too. I want them in the Big Ten. I know they're being a little bit prissy about it, but I don't understand the Big Ten fans who are like, oh, just let Notre Dame be. Or, we don't want them. Like,
why?
I don't know.
Why don't you want them? Why don't you want them? I liked
the Michigan State. I liked the Michigan State Notre Dame games, whenever we got them. And for a while, it seemed like we got them every year. Maybe I was just a little bit younger, and my memory jumbled the years together. But I feel like we played Notre Dame every year, and it was always a good litmus test early in the season for Michigan and Michigan State fans when they both played them. They usually played them before they played each other, right? So you could always point to that one common opponent that they had to maybe guess how our game was going to go or something. And I don't know, it was just something that I liked and something that I would like to bring back.
In some ways, for me, growing up, the Michigan State Notre Dame game was more enjoyable than the Michigan State Michigan game. It really was. Like, I don't know why. I thoroughly enjoyed the rivalry with Notre Dame. And it really was, people can look back on it with different glasses and say it wasn't. It was a rivalry. We hated each other. Planting the flag on each other's fields and all that. Like, it was it was a hell of a rivalry, and I enjoyed every bit of it. So I would love for them to get into the fold where we could make sure that it happened every other year, every third year, whatever it's going to be. There's going to end up being 30 teams in the Big Ten, so I don't know how they're going to figure it out, but I'm sure they will.
Yeah, it's going to be the Big 20.
It's on its way there. All right. That's going to do it for us for this episode of Griffin and Bass. Next time we see you guys, the Lions and the Colts will have played their preseason game. Before we get out of here, Ryan, you got a prediction on final score for Colts and Lions?
I don't know. Colts 22, Lions 14.
I got 30-20 Colts. All right. Thanks again for kicking it with Griffin and Bass. For Ryan Griffin, I'm Matt Bassin. As always, Wu-Tang is for the children. We'll see you guys after the weekend. Peace.
Hey, Ryan Griffin here. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Griffin and Bass. Be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to click the bell to receive the latest notifications from DSN and subscribe for breaking news, community blogs, polls, contests, and other content.